So welcome everybody, this is SharePoint Patterns and Practices monthly community call. So this is October 2018, the monthly community call. It is 9th of October, which is kind of terrifying. It is pretty soon Christmas, so remember to buy your Christmas presents early on. So today we do the typical monthly community call structure. So we do have a SharePoint development section, the latest news and all of that. And I'm going to walk through a few slides and few news related on that one. I'm trying to cut down this section more on referencing the URLs and articles and everything else. So we will have more time on the other topics. So we will have two demos or two topics from the engineering side. So first of all, we'll have Pat Miller doing a SPFx 1.7 preview. So basically stuff which we demonstrated in Ignite related on upcoming SharePoint Framework capabilities, so our developer platform capabilities, and then Sean Squires is going to cover site script and site designs and some branding announcements as well there related on what we showed in Ignite 2018. So trying to explain what's coming and from those topics as well. And we'll absolutely follow up on the IM window all the time if there's any questions related on the topics what we're going to go through. Now let's actually get on going on this one. So a few typical slides. So just to explain, because there might be some new people joining on the call as well. So on SharePoint, we actually have quite a lot of community calls and community engagement. So first of all, we have our Microsoft Tech community section, so SharePoint Developer group, which is a good place to ask questions. And that's one way of engaging together with community. We then also have a bi-weekly special interest group for SharePoint Framework. And this is basically all the SharePoint Framework topics and SharePoint and JavaScript customization based topics. That URL actually does work, but there is a simpler URL there. I need to remember to change that. But basically that bi-weekly SharePoint Framework community call is for really concentrating on our open source JavaScript based customization projects, and then also having a live community demos in those calls so people can actually see how to build stuff and how to make certain cool stuff happen. Then we also have a bi-weekly special interest group for SharePoint General Dev, and this is basically all the other stuff than SharePoint Framework. So anything related on branding, site designs, provisioning, PowerShell, Power Apps, Microsoft Flow, and all of those topics fall on this category. Originally, we had only this one monthly community call, but pretty soon we realized that, well, if people, there was a lot of people who wanted to do live demos, so we wanted to have that opportunity for these calls, and all of the calls are also getting recorded, so you can actually follow up on them later on from the YouTube channel as well. And like I said, we also have this monthly community call, and this is now getting more positioned on having the latest news and latest demos also from the engineering side. So we're prioritizing the engineering demos on the monthly community calls and then community demos in the bi-weekly special interest group calls. What it means basically is that we have at least one community call in every single week, which is quite a lot. This week we have two, because on Thursday we have also the SharePoint Framework community call. You can choose which of these you want to join and which of these you want to listen, or you can watch the summary from the SharePoint Dev blog and then jump on the right directly on the demos if you don't want to listen and the discussions, what's happening in the calls as well. Now, one note on the slides, the daylight saving time changes are coming pretty soon. If you're not, let's say, working within the international company, you might be not aware of this, but due to the fact that different countries do change their time zones and daylight savings in a different day, there might be some switching between the hours. So after November or mid-November, everything is again on the normal time zone. But for certain weeks, I think in the end of October, the timing for the US-based people and Canada-based people is slightly different, and then it gets back online on the following week. So please double check your calendars. If you download the recurrent invite to your Outlook, that's the easiest way to understand when the call is actually happening. Now, a few news, quick summary on the updated metrics. So everything is, the adoption is growing, obviously. We had and the YouTube usage and views and everything else is growing quite nicely. So we had 189,000 watch time minutes in YouTube. In GitHub, people are finding the GitHub more and more and clearly finding that useful. So you can actually find samples and reusable code and all of that and controls from the GitHub. Then we had 52,000 unique visitors in GitHub for the past 2 weeks, which is quite a big number. But it's nice to see that people are finding what's available for you for supporting your work, because that's what they are there for. So you can actually take any of that code and reuse that within your day-to-day work. And that hopefully will make your life easier. In the docs.microsoft.com, we had 884,000 views. So we're kind of slightly below the 1 million. We're targeting to hit the 1 million at some point. We'll see when we get there. On the PnP reusable components site, we have 18,700 unique tenants using those components, more than 13 billion HTTP requests generated. And the most used capability, once again, was the provisioning engine used by thousands and thousands of tenants. Now, on the other metrics, well, we don't actually expose the exact metrics on the SharePoint Framework usage and adoption, but we kind of hinted how well and how fast people are actually adapting this. So this is there to show you the usage curves for the third-party custom SPFx usage in SharePoint Online. So the usage per user and usage per tenant, and you can see how fast the curve is going deeper and deeper, and this deeper and deeper, well, adoption is growing all the time. This is actually updated with yesterday's numbers, so from SharePoint Online, so these are really recent. What's kind of an interesting on the level of adoption on this here is that in January this year, SharePoint Framework was already way more used than SharePoint add-ins in SharePoint Online. And since January, we grew already 310%. So we have tripled our usage since January this year, and that gives you the magnitude of the adoption of custom SharePoint Framework components. What's also kind of an interesting, we don't have that statistic on the slides either, is that quite a lot of actually SharePoint Framework usage is also in the classic experiences, so classic portals. So people are kind of getting ready with their customizations in the classic publishing sites, implementing them using SharePoint Framework, and at some point when they move to communication sites and modern experiences, the functionality itself is exactly the same. So kind of aligning from an implementation perspective for the future of the deployment, which is an interesting dimension here as well. Now, on the few kind of generic slides, which I always keep on these presentations, so documentation and guidance, AKMS SP DevDocs is the documentation location that had 884,000 views last month, which is pretty cool. And the second slide, which is here always, is around the issue tracking and issues on the SharePoint side, so AKMS SP Dev issues. If you have any developer-related issues, we do triage this at least twice a week to get in engineering, and we're trying to catch up with all of the information what you're giving us. We actually have new resources now, which we're training to take and help us on keeping up to date on all of the reports what you're giving. So thank you for being super active on there. We do apologize we've been unable to keep up to date on what's actually happening there. Now, a few additional news before we go to the demo section of things. So this one is the news from last week. So we announced that we're opening up the SharePoint Developer blog also for MVP. So if you're an MVP and you want to have additional exposure for yourself, and you have something really cool blog article which you would like to use or release that through the SharePoint Dev blog, that is now available for you to take advantage. And way channels as well, so that's 220,000 additional potential followers for you as well. Now, what else Obviously, today we released the SharePoint Dev Ecosystem SharePoint PnP October 2018 update. So this is basically a summary on what has happened within the last month. New samples, new contributions, listing all of the latest news and everything else. This is available from AKMS SP Dev blog. So basically our SharePoint Dev blog, you're able to also see all of the persons and companies who've been involved within the open source effort within the last month. So thank you everybody for your contributions. You are absolutely super helpful for others, and the whole community is highly thankful for what you're doing for the benefit of the others. And this also includes a lot of details related on, for example, the updates on the SharePoint Starter Kit, which we released. I'm going to mention that in a second as well. Now, one related on that one, so the PnP Starter Kit or SharePoint Starter Kit, well, I would actually call it SharePoint Starter Kit. I had a small typo on the title slide as titles there, but as part of the October release, we are releasing a new version, 1.3 version of the SharePoint Starter Kit. Sooner or later, we'll align the versions based on the SharePoint Framework versioning as well. But basically, what's new about this version, and really the cool thing, is the simplification of the deployment. So you can actually now deploy the SharePoint Starter Kit using a one PnP PowerShell command, which is apply PnP provisioning hierarchy, and that will then or read the Starter Kit PnP file, which is a PnP provisioning file, which actually contains inside of it the instructions to create site collections. It contains also solution packages and customizations, configurations, site design, site scripts, and everything what is getting provisioned on the site level. So it is seriously as simple as pulling down the repo and running a one PowerShell commandlet to get the whole multi-site collection, hub site scenario demo available within your tenant. In general, it has been already updated to 1.6 version of SharePoint Framework. It is also now using Contoso electronics branding. So my favorite color, orange, has been removed based on the request from our designers, which is fair. Maybe the orange wasn't that fancy looking. But now it's also using the imaginary and graphics which we used in Ignite 2018 related on Contoso electronics. So it's more polished, more fine-tuned from that perspective. There is roughly 15 web parts, 7 extensions, site design, site scripts, demonstrating also, for example, accessing Microsoft Graph data from SharePoint Framework web parts and components. So really cool stuff. Also demonstrates what's possible within the modern experiences. Now, sooner or later, this will be actually available through our provisioning service. We're working on that one as well. We showed that actually in Ignite, the provisioning service will even further simplify the deployment of the Starter Kit and other templates. But we still need to wait a few weeks or months for getting that one fully out. We need to sort out certain technical details. There's a question related on how much work to adapt for SharePoint 2019 preview. So 2019 GA is coming relatively soon. It is in our endless to-do list, so potentially split the existing the Starter Kit, SharePoint Starter Kit, to multiple solutions, which would then enable you to use those web parts in SharePoint 2019, which would be supported there. Because all of the Microsoft Graph web parts, which are using Microsoft Graph, do not work in SharePoint 2019 because they are not supported in on-premises. So there is a pretty big difference, obviously, there. Now, moving on things, one kind of, let's say, an ad. So SharePoint Dev Weekly, episode 8, went live actually earlier today. That was today, yes. So this is something which we started doing like 2 months ago, which is around, it's a video blog, basically, targeted to be 20 to 30 minutes. I think the last one took slightly longer because I was talking too long again. But basically what we're doing here is that every single week we're recording a new blog post or a video where we go through the latest cool articles written by the community. So we raise from the articles which are coming alive related on SharePoint development and SharePoint extensibility and customization. We're raising like 8 to 10 of them, and we'll talk about them in this call. And that's me and Waldek, and then we have always typically a visitor in the call as well. we're highly interested on your feedback on this one, and also if you're writing something cool, please tag or ping us in Twitter using the SP Dev Weekly hashtag, so we'll know to cover your stuff in these recordings as well. So thank you for that already in advance. Now, moving on things. So SharePoint Dev Roadmap, quick update on this one. We talked about the updates on the SharePoint Framework roadmap already in Ignite. We've been covering these in quite a few community calls as well. But basically, we promised in Ignite that 1.7 will come out by end of this year. Most likely, it will come earlier than that. But again, we're trying to not overpromise, so we're saying officially by end of this year. And 1.7 will then have a domain-isolated web part, which is a good example. So what it means is that you're able to isolate your web part to be executed inside of an iframe, rather than in the page, which will give you additional level of security. And that doesn't actually mean that much changes on the web part side. It will be an attribute in the manifest, and everything will be automatically taken care of. Now, dynamic data GA is going to happen. So dynamic data is the component web communications between the SharePoint Framework elements or SharePoint Framework components. List subscriptions is basically, how would I simplify this, a socket IO implementation for SharePoint lists. So basically, you are able to subscribe any events in your web part from a list. So if there's any modifications in a list, your web part will know if there's a new items, for example, generated on a list. SharePoint Framework components in Teams will go to preview, so that will be available through the Yeoman templates. Give me 1 second. So that you're able to basically implement SharePoint Framework web parts, which will work also as a Microsoft Teams tab. So you're able to use the exact same technology for both Teams customizations and SharePoint customizations. Supporting provider-hosted solution, that means that you're essentially using the provider, so the Microsoft Teams applications in the SharePoint pages. Then the app pages means that you can have lockdown layouts for your customizations, which is also useful for many of the scenarios. Support for React 16 is coming. I'm not sure if Bats wants to comment further on that one. We can actually, when we go to the Bats demo in a second, Bat can probably comment more around what it means. Does it mean that I need to update all of my existing code? And the answer is actually no, which is actually pretty cool. SharePoint 2019 support comes to the Yeoman template, so that's available. And then obviously there's a lot of changes coming in also on the theming, site design, site scripts, UI layer, which are not part of the SharePoint Framework. The SharePoint Framework is the developer platform, and then, for example, the site designs and site script and branding capabilities, which Sean will go through today, will be then on top of all of these changes. So a lot of cool stuff available here. Cool. So let's see. Quick summary on the contributors. So thank you, everybody. We're not going to obviously mention all of you. We're starting to get the font used on this slide is getting smaller and smaller, and even the image on the right side is getting smaller and smaller because we need to fill. Well, we want to fit everybody who contributed. So thank you for your contributions again on this month. The number of contributors is growing all the time, which is a good sign that people want to help each other, because that's really the thing what we want to help you to be able to do from an engineering perspective as well. From a Microsoft side of the from the company side of the thing, there's quite a big list of companies who've given their employees the permission to actually contribute. So these are the companies which we have permission to show their logo in the community calls or in the monthly communications. So thank you for these companies also letting their employees to spend time on an open source project, so contributing back for the community on those tools which they use anyway within their day-to-day work. So thank you much from the Microsoft side on those things as well. And then on the Microsoft side, it's quite a list of people who contributed on pages and samples and background the stuff or elements which have happened on the behind of the scenes as well. So thank you everybody from Microsoft side as well. Good. Now, that was 19 minutes, not too bad. That was pretty much in line what I was planning to do. And we do have Pat as the first person. And sorry, Pat, I actually did ping Pat on Microsoft Teams because I didn't see him, but he sneaked in as a visitor apparently on this call, so I didn't see you coming in. So Pat, you're unmuted. Can we hear you?
Hopefully.
Yes, we can hear you.
Okay.
Yes. Cool.
Technology. Great.
Technology works. That's always good. So anything, while you can actually share your screen and we can start looking into some of the 2017 capabilities. Now, I mentioned the React 16. What does it mean that we are adding a React 16 version support? So do you want to kind of elaborate that slightly from what does it mean for existing web parts and all of that?
Sure thing. So the SPFx framework, the SharePoint framework, when you do your build, if you take a look at the manifest file behind the scenes, it lists a whole bunch of dependencies. One of them, if you dig in, is React, and it'll say like React 15.6.2 or something like that, which says, hey, when my web part or my component loads, I need to SPFx go and grab the official SPFx version of React that you're serving for all the components on the page for version 15. And so for the 16 support, what will happen is we'll have the ability for your manifest to say, I want React 15 or I want React 16. And then we'll do side-by-side loading of the React framework. From the development and testing and validation we've been doing around this, you should be able to use the version 1.6 of the framework when it's ready, and say, I would like to use React 16.1.2 or whatever it is, and React DOM 16 and the typings for the 16. And then when you do a build, it'll be updated, and your React 16 code will work in SharePoint Online. The biggest trick and the biggest gotcha.
Pat, by the way, so people are kind of noting that, are you showing something, because we're seeing the Skype screen, but I don't think you're showing us anything at this point yet.
No, I'm not showing anything
yet. Just a random discussion. Yes, exactly.
I didn't realize that I was going to talk about this, so I didn't have
anything. sorry. But you can put a SharePoint there, so people are not that confused on.
Actually, what we can do.
Or should I let me summarize this in a one or two sentence, and then we can jump on the demo, so we're not eating up too much time. But basically, what we're looking into doing is that 1.7 SharePoint framework in the service will support both React 16 and 15, right? So you don't have to recompile or retranscompile any of your existing customization; they will work. But then, if you need to use React 16, you can do that as well. And that's really cool.
And like I said, the one gotcha is that you're going to have to make sure that all of your associated libraries are all using the same version of React, because React doesn't really like swapping between 15 and 16 in the same DOM element. So we'll provide guidance of use the Fabric React 5.123 and so on and so forth. But then if you have other React libraries, just make sure that they're compatible with 16. That's all.
Yep.
Okay. So what I was planning on showing was another bit of the Ignite demo that we did at Ignite to go over the updates to the dynamic data, which is hitting GA in 1.7. The initial release or dev preview focused a lot on the producer side of things, and so for GA we've finished up on the making it easy for the consumer, which is probably going to be the more popular part of it. So here I grabbed the banner web part out of the SP starter kit. And this is basically how it comes, right? You've got your text for your image overlay. Here is some text. What do we got here? I'm not sure why it's not updating our text here. Let me try that again.
That's a good start for a demo. So
it's the perfect start for the demo. I was like, yes, there's no dynamic data showing up. Wonder if I need to have a URL in there as well. Some text. There we go. I guess it needs an image URL before it'll display any text. So there you go. Clearly that's not an actual valid URL, but that's good for now. So here's the standard text or the standard code for your for the banner web part. And the first place to start updating an existing web part is with your properties. So this is your typical thing that says, here's the web part properties that we want to be persisting. And originally it had banner, text, image, and link as just strings. And so now what we have is this helper class called dynamic property, where you can say, I have a dynamic property of those same types of strings, numbers, booleans, objects, arrays, that sort of thing. And this dynamic property we'll get to in a bit. It provides additional functionality for managing the references. The next little bit we need to change, so the people that are familiar, this properties metadata lets you provide additional information about the properties in your web part, mostly because TypeScript understands types, but by the time you compile the JavaScript, you don't. So this sort of provides some additional information, such as, hey, this is, what we add is the dynamic property for banner text and banner image and banner link are all strings. And then it just goes on with the rest of the properties that you have. The next piece that we've added is the property pane configuration. And so what we've added is, in the property pane, you can have different groups now. So we have this primary group that consists of this primary group and a secondary group, and a little bit of logic here that says, let me make sure that I've got my right brackets. So the primary group just is bound to the standard text fields like we had before, and the secondary group is bound to these dynamic properties that we handle the controls for and provide the end user capability for picking stuff. And these primary and secondary groups don't even need to be bound to dynamic data. You can add them however you want. But the interesting thing here is says, hey, should I be showing the primary or the secondary? And this says, show the secondary group if the banner text property has a data source with it. And then it just follows through the rest of the properties that we have there. So I'll save that. It'll compile in the background and give me an error because the banner text TSX file hasn't been updated yet. This one's even simpler. So originally, we pulled the banner text out of the web part properties. We just say, banner image is the banner image from the properties. Now what we have is the banner image, you say, because it's a dynamic property now, rather than just a static string, you can say try get value. And what that'll do is, if it's a static value that the user has typed in explicitly, it'll return that. And if it's a dynamic property that the user has configured through the property pane, it will detect that it's a dynamic property. It'll go to the source data, fetch the current value, and return it back to the dynamic property as well. So these lines basically say, hey, banner image, if they typed in a hard-coded value, use that. Otherwise, go to the source data and get the property that it was bound to. And that succeeded. Okay, let's go back to our page here. So we'll refresh our web part. the web part doesn't really, let's just add another one. So now if we switch back quickly to the code here, in the configuration we said, here's this group. And so what that group shows up as is this little thing up here that says connect to source. And you can override the text and the icon if you need to. And now we get to choose from the data sources that are available for the author. And so in this case, there's the page context, which will have like the current user, the current site, the current list, and so forth. Or in this case, we want to say this other web part called the real-time news feed, which is below us here. And we are interested in the selected item property. And I apologize for a second here. Oops, cancel.
No apologies.
I was showing somebody a bug.
There we go.
And there's the bug. We had a bug where if you threw an exception from your get property value, then the web property pane would disappear, as evidenced here.
And just to be super clear, this is the preview alpha version, not the one which you will get the preview for you by end of this year. So, this
right, we're just fixing up the odd little loose end here. Okay.
Yeah.
I'll try this one more time here. Back go back here, configure a web part, connect to data source. We want the real-time news feed. Oops. We're interested in the selected item, and now here we can say the text we want to be, say, the title, the URL we want to be the file URL, and the selected item property should be the link title. We could say it's the preview URL. And now as we select the properties here, the dynamic data, which is the dynamic part of it, is updating this banner web part with the data that's been selected.
Now, on this one, there was a good question on the ION window before we close or move on to another
Sure.
things. We still have some time for you to show some of the stuff, but that was a good question. So could you implement a web part which is then responsible of reading query parameters, and then based on the query parameters, it's bypassing that to all of the other pages or web parts on a page? And the answer is absolutely, because basically you would create a web part which is then responsible of reading the query parameters, and that would serve that information for other web parts in a page, because that will then open up an interesting scenarios related on having a one page which is fully dynamic, which is based on the query parameters changing the behavior, right?
Yeah, and so I'll just quickly do one little thing here. So one of the properties here, if we want to select the page context, is URL query parameters.
Yeah.
And then you could say the image should be the URL.
Yeah.
Since that was driven by this URL up here. And we also expose the URL fragment as well for the hash value.
Can you now don't be too fast? So just that drop down is super interesting. So the page content is not really just page content. There's also the user information, the site information, the web information, which is extended context of the page. Absolutely.
Yeah, and this was what was done in the dev preview. A lot of, I'll be totally honest, a lot of this stuff, the end user author will have no idea what on earth to do with the instance URL of the AAD info. And so we're going through it and scrubbing out the things that won't make a lot of sense for authors to be presented with. So that's a rationalization that we're doing before GA. But and the right way to differentiate between as a developer, what's in the SP page context info and what's in the current page information. We're trying to sort of the right objects to display that to the end user so that they can pick things from the current user or the current request or the current page or that sort of thing.
Makes a lot of sense. Now, the kind of a following logical question, which nobody has yet asked on the IAM window, unless I missed it. What about out-of-the-box web parts? Will out-of-the-box web parts also support these kind of things? And obviously, for that one, answer is yes, because SharePoint Framework is not used only by third party. It is used by first party as well. First party meaning SharePoint Engineering. So the list view web parts, the document library web parts will actually expose this kind of information as well. So you're able to then tie in what is getting selected on the list of things on the other side. And here we go. But it's actually showing that basically the document web part is exposing and saying, hey, I'm a source of information. What kind of information? And you're able to tie in to that one as well. So
yeah, and so we're the preview has sort of a rough first guess for what the list view should be, but we're working with the list view guys to make it fit along with the guidance of how web parts should expose properties. And that'll be done for GA as well.
Yeah.
Okay. Thanks very much. I'm not sure if there are any other questions.
Did we miss any important questions or any follow-up questions? Everybody's super. Yes, this is well, this is not GA.
Yeah.
Well, no.
This is GA in 1.7, yeah.
Exactly. Dynamic data is GA in 1.7. So the theme stuff, which we demonstrated in the SPFx call a few weeks back, we will do more demos on that one in the future calls as well. What else? The list, the socket.io stuff in a list, we'll absolutely do demos on that one as well. From a timing perspective,
I think that's the one we demoed last week.
Yes. The SharePoint Framework, community call. The 1.7 timing, officially we're saying by end of this year, because there might be surprises. We do have internal objectives, which are pretty soon, actually, for getting the versions out, because we don't want to wait too long until too close to the Christmas, because then the holiday season starts, and we should be shipping earlier than that. So we wouldn't need a separate query string URL web part. That is correct for Mike's comment. Basically, there is a query parameter capability on the web part or the context automatically. So that's really cool.
Yeah.
Cool.
Perfect.
I think that's enough for this one. So let's actually jump on Sean, your screen, if you're still on call.
Awesome.
You should be on call.
Yeah, I am still here. Let's not jump on me, though.
Let's jump on Sean.
All right, hold on one second. Let's make sure I can still share my desktop.
And thanks, Pat. Really great to have a live demo on that one. And it's evolved enormously, because in the preview it didn't have a UI to do the connections. So in the GA, there's a native out-of-the-box UI in the web part properties to do the connections. So that's really cool.
My pleasure. Thanks, guys.
Cool. Sean.
Awesome.
What do you have?
Yeah. Hey. Good morning, everybody, and thanks for having me back. Just coming off of Ignite a couple weeks ago, where we got to share a couple of new capabilities that we're bringing into the branding and site design space. I actually did a session with our director of design, Denise Trebona, because we are working on a bunch of updates to the sort of the change the look experience that I'm not going to spend a lot of time on, just because some of that stuff is still sort of in progress and it's less dev focused, but I did want to kind of bring up the roadmap just to kind of give everybody a heads up of where that is, and I'm obviously happy to show whatever we have configured on the demo. But the main thing that we're doing is in the branding space is just adding more settings and capabilities to expand beyond just setting custom themes. We're bringing a lot of stuff into the header, a lot more flexibility there, including, for example, we just went 100% with header backgrounds, which is the ability to put a strong or a light or a gray emphasis on the background, just to on the header background, just to bring a little bit more pop and visual break in the page. We're also bringing a lot more capabilities into the header in terms of settings, in terms of being able to hide or toggle certain elements. Some things we're working on right now, which we didn't demonstrate at Ignite, but are working on and will probably are hoping rather to include in the release before the end of the year is things like being able to change the nav orientation or even hide it, so you have a little bit more flexibility there. A couple of other things. Let's see. Integrating the change the look panel. So what we showed at Ignite real quickly was a panel that looked something like this. So in the change the look experience, you have these new set of tabs now. So we're introducing things like dedicated header, navigation, and footer tabs. We're going to be bringing a footer into the experience. Right now, tentatively, it'll probably only be available for for communication sites, but we are looking to bring it to both to the team site as well, just for template parity. One of the product truths that we're always adhering to, or trying to as best we can, is to ensure that we're not just producing features that are only available on one template, so that users kind of get stuck like, oh no, I picked the wrong template. We don't want you to ever be in that position. So a lot of the capabilities that I'm showing you today that we're going to be releasing, some may be introduced first on the communication site template, but the intent is always to bring it to the team site as well. So let's see, we got the footer, and that's going to be largely a simple footer that just kind of does links, logos, and letters. The idea being that you can bring a logo into it, or as well as adding your own links, editing the footer navigation, very similar to the experience of just, like you would add site nav. You can go ahead and add links there, and they'll show up in a persisted footer. Let's see, the other thing we have here is mega menu. We're bringing a new mega menu, which I think a lot of people were excited to hear. That is also going to be just a new navigation display that is going to be available, and I think it's actually on this site here. Yep, here we go. So instead of the cascading default layout that we have currently, we're now giving you the ability to essentially have up to level 3 links. So you can have your header, some subheaders, and then links. And we'll actually also be introducing linkless headers. So that'll be a very cool and welcome experience for organizing portals. The header, we're also adding some new header layouts. So you have the ability to actually modify the header, take advantage of more real estate, or just reduce some of the available components and controls that are in the header. And we're going to be adding a little bit more flexibility to those layouts over time, including, for folks on this call, probably the ability to actually inject your own JSON, so you can actually provide your own custom header outside of the layouts that we'll provide in the product. And then finally, the theming capability. I think a lot of folks have already seen this. This is the thing that just rolled out. Header emphasis is actually going to be changing to header background, and that's just the ability to go ahead and put like a strong emphasis on the header. And that is actually fully available out in your tenant today. The experience that you're seeing here on the screen, which we used at Ignite, is actually going to change just slightly. We're still working on the UI. Pretty much it's just going to be, we're going to be folding everything under these new blades or tabs, if you will, just to give us a little bit cleaner look and more consistency across the experiences. We're also going to be moving some of the controls around just so they're in their logical places. And let's see, what else? And then obviously as a nice segue to site scripts and site designs, we'll be making all of these scriptable actions. So now in addition to applying a theme as a part of a site script, you'll be able to do things like set the minimal header or disable the footer or even apply specific navigation layout like a mega menu. Let's see. I'm just wondering if there's anything else. I think there was one more thing I wanted to show you guys that Denise has shown. It's actually not under the change the look. What we'll be moving this is under the site information panel where you can change the logo. One of the things that we're doing now is we're supporting different aspect ratios instead of just the square, and also finally support for transparent logos. So I think I still have one here. Yes, this larger one. So you can do something like this and go ahead and set a transparent, more horizontally a rectangular logo, and that will be applied and render. Wow, that was a really strange refresh. There we go. And so you can actually have a little bit more control and flexibility over the logos that are in the header. Okay, enough with branding. So let's go back to the map real quickly. So most of the stuff I just talked about and showed you, along with, section background colors, which we showed and also were shown in a couple of other sessions. All of this is intended to be coming to you before the end of the year. We may not get the rollout completely out the door, but the hope is the plan is to actually start the rollout. And one of the things I'm working with my team on is to see if we can get some of those equivalent site script actions built to complement that release. So that's what's happening there. Let me pause real quickly. Bess, am I missing any major questions before we kind of switch topics here?
Well, a few quick ones. So are SVG logos supported from Stefan is an interesting question.
Oh, that is an interesting question, Stefan. I don't know the answer. Let me. That's a really good question. I don't know. Let me find out and report back.
Yeah, and you mentioned that site designs will support the mega menu and all of that stuff, so I'm just double checking things. Will there be a debugging support capability for site scripts?
Debugging support, yes, that's something that's still in progress. Great question, good feedback. I think I get that every time I join you guys, so thank you for keeping me honest there. All right, great. Let's go back to this guy here. Let's see. Right, so site scripts and site designs. The other half of our talk was some of the improvements and updates that are happening there. The two biggest ones that I'm going to demo for you guys in our remaining few minutes here is we started working on script automation, so essentially the ability to serialize from existing SharePoint objects. So what we can do now is we're starting with lists and libraries. If you have an existing list, you can go ahead and run a PowerShell command and actually generate the site script from that, and that includes things like custom columns, content types, the views. One piece that we're still working on before we release is trying to get the lookup column support in there. One question that folks have asked is what's happening with manage metadata column support, and that is something that we are also working on this month and hope to have an update for you soon. Obviously, the serialization stuff, which I'll demo in a second, is just the beginning. We're looking to obviously expand that to other SharePoint objects and site settings so that it just makes it much easier for folks to build those scripts without having to whip out their JSON editor and be as awesome as all you guys. The other big piece is I'm happy to say that we have a model for supporting large scripts, site scripts. So as you all know, for those of you who've been playing around with this capability, we do have a limit on the number of script actions that could be run, and partly that was just to, for reliability and performance reasons. What we have done now is we've effectively built a scheduler so that you can queue up rather large script actions, and that's something I'll also demonstrate for you. It's less about the limit on the number of actions now. It's really just the overall size of the script files. And so we can actually run up to 100,000 characters right now as the limit. Obviously, my ask and question and comment to you guys is let us know if that's sufficient, or if you're, if you all start getting into this and you're like, we're still running into limits. We're looking at ways to just kind of continue to expand on that. But hopefully this initial lift will get you guys going in the right direction there. And we will be rolling that capability, both of these capabilities out very soon. Let's see. Let's go look at some of this stuff. Let's go try some of this stuff out so you can see what it's doing. Let me jump over to a PowerShell here. Actually, the first thing I'm going to do, there's a third thing that actually I didn't mention. For those of you who have watched the video or were at Ignite, we are also building a new persistent experience for site scripts and site designs, specifically in the UI, so that if something is executed against the site, you can actually go and see that go and pull that stuff back up. A lot of great feedback from you is that, hey, once something gets run, it's really hard to know where those things have been, applied to, what sites they've been applied to, or what if I want to make updates. And that's always been a part of our larger roadmap, is to start pushing these things into the UI so that we can give folks the flexibility to actually execute or apply additional site designs or updates directly from the site itself. And obviously, we'll be complementing that with some administrative actions in the near future. So let's go ahead and just quickly create a site. And you can start to see some of this stuff. Let's see. Let's go ahead and create a showcase site. And I'm going to call this dev community. Let's go ahead and create that site. And you'll see that when the when the com site is created, a slightly new experience here. We are now getting a larger, whoops, I just closed it. That wasn't very nice. Let me open that back up so you can see what that was. We now have a persistent link here in the gear menu for the site designs, and you can go ahead and bring that up, and it's going to be a much larger panel that's going to give you more detail on the script details that were run for that site design. So I'm going to go ahead and run that update, and it'll go ahead and apply those changes. Once those changes are applied, that link is still there, and you can still go back to it and actually see the history. We have a little issue that we're working on still, which is why this is not released. I have to go ahead and refresh that. You will not have to do that. Oh, it's still doing its thing. Okay, so we'll get back to this one on another one. But the idea is that once you've gone ahead and applied a site design, even if you have multiple site designs applied to a site, you'll be able to go ahead and see those the resulting script action output in this window. Okay. No, Vignesh, you don't want you to have control right now. All right, so let's go and see a couple of other things we can do. Let's go ahead and grab this site, and the first thing I want to do is let's go ahead and apply it to a variable so that I can now use that variable. And one of the other things I wanted to do is I told you guys we can start to serialize and extract a site script from an existing library. So I have a library here, and you'll see that it's got a bunch of custom columns, it's got some custom views, and it's even got some list formatting on the effort column. We're going to go ahead and grab this library, and we're going to go ahead and extract it. So the extraction command is, let's go ahead and actually apply it to this guy. And it's a new command called get SPO site script from list. And then all you have to do is pass in the list URL. And in this case, it's that media library. And just like that, it's done. Let's go ahead and see that. There it is. Let's go ahead and actually grab that just so you can kind of see what the output is looking like. So this is what we just extracted in just a matter of seconds. And you'll see that because of the complexity of this library with the number of views and fields and things like that, it probably already exceeds the list limit, the list number of script action limit that we had in there. So obviously that scheduler is going to come in handy. So let's go ahead and use that. I'm going to go ahead and actually grab this script output and go ahead and make a new site script. So let's go ahead and do that now. I've already got this, so you guys don't have to watch me type. Essentially what I'm doing is I'm adding, applying to a new variable the add SPO site script action. I'm giving it just the title and the description, and the content is the output that I grabbed from this list, okay? So now I've got that new site script, and we can go see what that guy is. There's my site script. So now I'm going to go ahead. I've already got another script action that I've already built. Let's see. I think it's script 2. And you'll see that script 2 is another huge list. Okay. So because site script. So the reason why I'm showing you guys this is because what I want to do is I want to build a site design that actually marries these two, just so we build an even larger site script. So I've already got that. Up here, let's make sure I still have it. There it is. Okay. So let's talk through this one. What I'm doing is I'm creating a new site design. So add SPO site design, Mondo script demo, and I'm just throwing in an arbitrary web template ID that doesn't exist, so it won't show up in the UI. And the two site scripts that I'm using are the two site scripts are the ones the one I just extracted. That was new site script. And the new site script one, and then the one that I just showed you guys that already existed, which is an existing site script that's also pretty large. So let's go ahead and create this site design, and let's go see what we have. So now I have a new site design. So now that I have this new site design, I actually can go and run this through the UI. You will be able to run this through the UI when we release it. I haven't pushed those bits to a place where I can test them yet. We literally are just doing that work right now. So let's go ahead and do this through PowerShell. And the way you do that is you run a new PowerShell commandlet, which some of you may have seen because it went out in last month's release. Let's get back over here. It's called Add SPO Site Design Task. And so the site the parameters that it takes is where do you want to apply this site, similar to the invoke SPO site design commandlet. So I'm giving it a site, which is the one that I just created for you guys. Let's go back and look at that real quick. That was which one was it? It was this guy, Dev Community Demo. Yes, okay, great. Let's go make sure that I don't have any other site designs there. Nope, okay, I just have that guy there that I ran when I first created the site. So what I'm going to go do is I'm going to go ahead and schedule this task and run this site design, this big one, against this site. So let's go ahead and run that. And you'll see that what that is showing is the output is saying, hey, a site design task has been scheduled against this URL, this website. So I can go ahead and actually check the status of that with another commandlet called get SPO site design, and you'll see that it's still running. So we'll give it another second. Hopefully, it's already, oops, hold on. And it's done. So what happened is that really large site script, or rather site design of two really large site scripts was already executed against the site. Let's go take a look and see if the magic happened. I want to go ahead and refresh the site page. And I didn't do enough visual stuff here for you guys, but actually this guy, there's a new site logo. There's a bunch of new lists and libraries and things like that. And actually the theme was changed, but let's go take a look and see what the site design information said. And there it is. Okay, so a couple of issues, but I think you guys get the idea. Here is the really large site script that I just ran, that I built for you on the fly, that has a whole bunch of stuff going on, and all of that stuff was applied to the site pretty quickly. And that's it.
Cool. Now we have a set of questions which we need to go through. And let's
okay. Oh, wait, hold on. Before I jump over to the questions, one other thing while I'm here, just because I'm excited about this too. The other thing you'll see here is we have this link that we're still working on the UI a little bit, but we're going to actually have a link that will allow you to apply other site designs. So the other cool thing is you can go ahead and grab another site design and say, oh, perfect, legal, they're taking over this site. Let's go ahead and run that. And just like you were running it through a site creation experience, it's going to go ahead and run that thing. This is still a work in progress, but that's the idea, is that other site designs that have been scoped and available to me, the user and owner of the site, I will be able to see those and apply those. That's obviously also a way that you can generate updates as well. Okay. And there we go. See, logo change, all that good stuff. Okay, jumping over to the window.
No, don't go to the Skype.
Don't go to the
questions. I will, and then we'll
ask the questions. Okay,
all right. UI, so that's better. So there was Chris Kent mentioned that accent added to the theme generator.
Oh, yes.
On the context of following up on the promises and all of that. So
yeah, no, fantastic feedback. Yeah, there's you know what? I'll just be perfectly blunt with you guys. I have been trying to get some funding to do a bunch of things. We have a bunch of things planned for the theme generator, but making sure at least the available slots that are out there are in the output is. Apologies for the delay on getting that. It will be fixed.
Sooner or later, and that's fine. So there was Mike actually had a question related. Will there be a tenant level setting to enable or block the theme options? So basically, if you go to the theme setting, this is a good question.
Yep.
So will there be a tenant level setting to hide header, navigation, footer option from here so that the people don't mess up things? Or how
No,
do
it's a
we
great
handle
question.
this from a control perspective again?
Yeah. So as you guys probably have noticed, let's see here. You'll see that I applied a custom theme here, and that custom theme is actually this Contoso Electronic Technologies. So as some of you may know, when you create and upload company themes, they are not customizable. So you'll notice here that if I click it, there is no customize option like there are with the SharePoint themes. One of the things that we're going to be doing is we're going to be providing you with an admin switch. And that admin switch is going to give you the control over, hey, I don't want these other change the look branding settings to be available for my company themes, or they can be available. So you can say because we've talked with a bunch of customers, and I'd love to hear more feedback from you guys, but some folks have said, what we care more about is company color and brand, but in terms of, the layout of the site itself, we're less concerned about. So they would probably set that switch to say these things would be available to them. Others might say, you know what, I want to completely control that brand, including how the page looks and renders, and they would have the ability to essentially disable these. So the short answer to your question is yes, we are going to be giving you a switch. Initially, that switch will probably that switch probably won't go out with this release. So these options will be available for for out-of-box themes only, and not available for company themes. We're still working through the specifics of that.
Just a quick comment, Vignesh, that is getting the Contoso Electronics logo on the top is a setting in Tenant Admin UI, so no worries on that. Now, can you go back on the selecting of theme, or the previous view on this? Obviously, there will be, I'm assuming there will be a tenant level. No, close this one.
Close this one.
Abort, Sean, abort. Okay, this one.
Close this one.
No,
yeah,
that's good. So, but this one has the themes as well. So, but there will be a tenant level setting of hiding those themes as well, obviously.
Oh yeah, let me comment on that. Yeah, let me comment on that real quick, guys. So what you're seeing on the screen here is I'm on this tenant is what we actually used when we were demoing and running sessions at Ignite. This is still a work in progress. This new suite shell, which is eventually going to host the new Microsoft Search. That's why a lot of this stuff is sliding over. But this is also a new panel experience that will be coming to a number of settings. There's even a new help one that will be coming as well. This SharePoint experience will get first priority when you're in SharePoint. So all of these sort of personal and Office 365 settings are actually going to hide. They're going to go behind a tab. So because it's a bit confusing that you see these themes and then you also have SharePoint-specific site themes. So, yeah, and as Vesa just noted, some tenants might even turn this stuff off completely, in which case it wouldn't render.
Yep, cool. Now, a few other questions still. We will go slightly over time. So, Sean, do you have a hard stop right now?
No, I am happy to stick around for a minute.
Okay,
sorry.
Because there was a good set of questions. So, link color for theme. So, can we modify the link color in the theme? And the answer is yes, we can modify the link color in theme, right?
Yes.
Basically, the links in the UI. So, absolutely, you can modify that in the theme settings.
Yeah, and in fact, real quickly, just one of the things, go grab for those of you who can, go grab the deck, BRK 3090 if you want to get, I think it was referenced in a couple of other places, but in our deck, in our session deck, we do have a number, this guy here, sorry. Let me jump back up there. There is aka.ms.sp design guidance. This is going to be a new landing place where we're putting a lot of design guidance. In fact, a reference to the SharePoint Starter Kit that Vesa talked about at the top of the hour. That's included there. There's also a bunch of other stuff. We're going to be adding more articles and resources for how to, customize your site and set you up for, as it says there, for success. So that's where a lot of that information is going to start to go. So that's one thing you want to bookmark for sure.
Cool, excellent. A few more questions. Risa asked, view formatting, can it be applied as part of the site design and site script?
View formatting, yes, it can, absolutely. Yes. In fact, if we had more time, that script, let's see, remember that the library, that I apologize. I'm losing my place. The library that I copied included view formatting. In this case, it just had some column formatting here. But we support both column and row formatting, the new view formatting. And we extracted that. So that was actually a part of that extraction. If we go and look at this, you will see here that I believe, where is it? Might be too long for me to find. Trust me, it is in here. So if the site design that I just applied to that new site, if I go ahead and start uploading stuff in that library and setting the effort field, it will actually pick up that view formatting.
Yeah. So basically, answer is yes, it will be available now.
Yeah, sorry, that was a really long-winded answer to say yes.
Simplifying things. So. Gautam is actually having a really good suggestion. Hey, can we have a custom properties in the panel? So the site information panel. That is an awesome question. That is an awesome actually suggestion. So if you click the gear, you can see the site information panel. Not that panel. Come on.
No, this one.
This
one.
So having a placeholder, having a support, not on this one, the previous one. So having a support for you to add your own site level property editors, basically, because there's always such a massive amount of, let's say, metadata which you want to set on a site level or something else on a site level. Having a capability here on exposing a custom option for adding options or configuring settings would make a lot of sense. That falls though more on mine and Pat Miller's responsibility to figure out. So
yeah, no, but I will say this though, that is great feedback. One of the things I think I've shared either with this audience or in other venues before is even as a part of site provisioning, we recognize that there is a need for both approval as well as the collection of additional metadata outside of what the products, ask for. And so we are looking at ways through Flow and Power Apps to allow you to essentially embed your own customizations into that experience, because we don't want you to have to do what you had to do before, which is go and build all of that experience. We want to give you entry points into the provisioning flow as needed to collect that data. But then obviously, if you're going to collect it, you need to have a way to expose it in the site itself. And so we're looking.
And it might be something that you're connecting this site to an SAP system or whatever, and then you need to have that extensibility point to be able to do that or whatever. But anyway, so that's a great input from Gautam. Now, one last thing, but I wanted to quickly walk through and explain. Hey, Sean. So this the site designs and site scripts, and this is awesome. We are able to extract a list already. So how does this relate on the PMP provisioning stuff, and when would I use what and when not? So.
Yeah, so I think the short answer to that, and Vesa can help correct or amend, is, as you guys probably know, there's still some core capabilities and configurations that we don't yet support natively in site scripts, and that probably the main one is setting custom pages in web parts. So I think that there's still very much a place for any existing solutions, or if you have requirements for those types of configurations. I will say that we are working on some amendments to the modern page API so that we can provide that capability for you guys. It's very much on our roadmap. Let's see. I think, I think that's the main one, but I think there's also the same mantra that I've been saying since we announced this capability is that the option to do things like trigger flow and stuff like that is still, and even install or register SPFx solution is still required. If you have custom solutions, we don't want to lock you out of being able to take advantage of, that work or previous investments. So the site script verb vocabulary continues to grow. We are continuing to work on that. I have a couple that I didn't have time to get to today that we will be announcing and releasing very shortly. But yeah, I think that there's still always a place for the PMP stuff.
Yeah, and yes, I absolutely agree on that. So when possible, use site design site scripts. It's faster. It's executed server side. That's why it's faster. It's not as chatty. The PMP has a delta handling, and it's executed remotely, and that's why it's actually slightly, not as speedy as the site design site script. Now, the PMP provisioning also supports getting site designs and site scripts provisioned in a tenant. So you're able to easily get your site designs and site scripts provisioned to your dev tenant, test tenants and production tenants. So that's really the role where the PMP is heading also in the future, more on the tenant level automation. And then we use the site designs and site scripts on the site provisioning and site level automation where possible. And like Sean said, currently there are certain gaps still in site scripts and site designs, but and then you fall back on the PMP provisioning when needed. But
Yep, and we're looking to fill those gaps. But yeah, absolutely, I think that there's a place for both of them, and that was by design. So
yeah. There was one last question. Jordan is asking, what was the command led to extract the list and library structure? That's not yet out, right? So we don't.
It is not. Okay, so yeah, so roadmap and release and all that stuff. So this stuff is really close to being ship ready. Specifically, those three things that I just showed you: the ability to the PowerShell commandlets to extract a list or library, the PowerShell commands and REST to be able to schedule large script runs, and then that new updated UI to both see and view run history and run scripts, site designs rather, from the UI. All of that is intended to come out this fall. I'm hoping that we'll be able to ship. Oh gosh, don't hold me to this. I'm going to say November.
Don't say it. No.
We're working to get it ship ready, guys, this month. So I'm hoping that we can start getting it out to you before the holidays. Yeah,
absolutely. Yeah, that's always a good target. Now, I think that we're run out of time. We do apologize on taking slightly extra time.
It seems to be my MO these days.
Yeah, well, there's such a humongous amount of good questions to cover as well. And the recording will be available on YouTube in 24 hours. So the AKMS, and if you can't remember any of these URLs, which we're all the time sharing, go AKMS SPPMP. That is the location where you can find the documentation URLs, our portals, YouTube URLs, our community calls, and all of that information. But we don't unfortunately have more time now for questions, but definitely we'll get Sean back on the calls in the future as well. But thank you, Sean, and I also saw that Pat had already dropped, so thank you, Pat, even though you're no longer in a call. And thank you everybody for your awesome questions and support and feedback. So.
Yep.
Thank you.
Yep. Hey, I will just add, thank you everybody for the time and opportunity today. I'll go take a look at some of the questions. Feel free to reach out to Vesa and I either through Twitter or through other channels, and I'll try and follow up with any glaring ones that we missed. But stay tuned. Follow me. Yeah, follow me. We'll keep things apprised on when this stuff becomes available.
And we always prefer public channels like Twitter or Amos Tech Community, because that way, when we answer, potentially some other people can see that as well, rather than sending us an email, because that doesn't simply scale. So, trust me, I know.
All right. Wonderful. Thank you, everybody.
The recording of the session will be posted in the SharePoint Dev community as SharePoint Dev blog, which is AKMS SP Dev blog. But thank you, everybody. We'll be seeing you later on the community calls, hopefully. Thank you, Sean. Thank you, Pat. Thank you, everybody. Bye-bye.
Thanks, Vesa.